If you are a Kenyan millennium, or you are a millennium who likes Kenyan political history, especially of multi-party, I would request that not only do you watch this video several times, but you also welcome several of your friends to watch it several times. We are going to discuss about Kenneth MATIBA. His full names were Kenneth Stanley Njindo MATIBA. He was born on 1st June 1932. His Christian name, if we can call it that, his Christian name was Kenneth. His father's Christian name was Stanley. And his father's traditional name was Njindo. And MATIBA was both his name and his grandfather's name. So he used 4 names: Kenneth Stanley Njindo MATIBA. He went to Alliance High School. That's why when he started hotel business, he called them Alliance Group of Companies. He graduated from Makerere University and taught shortly at Kangaru. Kangaru iko Meru. He taught shortly at Kangaru as a graduate teacher. You know, those days, graduate teachers used to teach colleges, and secondary teachers used to be called S1 and S2, and primary teachers used to be called P1, P2, P3, P4. So he taught at Kangaru for 6 months and was promoted to be the deputy officer in charge of higher education in the Ministry of Education. The offices were at Gill House. Gill House used to be used by government until even recently in the 90s, because in 1990, when I got my driving license, I got it from Gill House. Right now, I think Gill House is a private business only. It is along Moi Avenue. When he was the deputy officer in charge of higher education, on 18th May 1963, he was summoned to the office of the Education Permanent Secretary, who was a Mzungu. The Education Permanent Secretary called him, and when he went to visit the Education Permanent Secretary, the Mzungu told him that I am the outgoing Education Permanent Secretary and you are the incoming Permanent Secretary. It is after he had been so told that later he went to Government House. Government House is what today we call State House, where he was sworn in as the permanent secretary for education. That was in 1963, and he was born in 1932. So he was 31 years old. Look around you and see if you can find any 31-year-old man. Then imagine that person as a permanent secretary. So when he went to Government House, which today is called State House, he was among the 3 first African permanent secretaries, one of whom was Kitili Mwendwa. As I talk, I know I'll remember the other one. they were taken 3 permanent secretaries. He served in different ministries as permanent secretary. He served for a long time as a permanent secretary in the Home Affairs under Moi. So they became very close for a long time. I'll also come and comment on that, because when Moi detained him, he was shocked. He never believed that Moi could detain him. He also served in the Commerce, Industry and Cooperative Ministry as a permanent secretary. That is when he interacted a lot. You see, it is Commerce, Industry and Cooperative. That is where he interacted a lot with people who are doing business, and it also gave him a chance to enter into business. In 1968, he resigned and started his own business. He started with Jardini Hotel, which was one of the several hotels that formed this is what we call Alliance Group of Hotels. He later started flying flowers out of the country, and he was using the East Africa Airways. But you could find that East Africa Airways, which was co-owned by the 3 countries, Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania, there were a lot of delays and whatever, and mambo ya maua. So it made him silently agree with Michuki, the Matatu man, Michuki rules, and Jonjo, and they were planning to start an airline of their own. But Tanzania came to know about it, and when Tanzania came to know about it, they complained to Kenya, and that airline never started. He later ousted Julius Gikonyo Kiano as the MP for Mbiri constituency, although Mbiri later was changed to the name Kiharu. In Kikuyu, Kiharu means field, kiwanja. That is why Jomo Kenyatta used to like telling people, aromene kiharo, yani mwanaume ni kiwanja. He became the MP for that area after dethroning Julius Gikonyo Kiano, and Julius Gikonyo Kiano never went back to politics. He, shortly before the 1988 elections, no, immediately after Mlolongo elections, 1988, there followed an election for KANU officials. And that time, there used to be only one political party, KANU. So when there was only one political party, KANU, he was rigged out openly, and he defied. Then he went and talked to Kibaki immediately after that, where Kibaki and him planned that they would resign at the same time. He was back as an MP and as a minister. So they planned with Kibaki to resign at the same time. But when it came to resignation, Kibaki never resigned. But MATIBA resigned. When he resigned, a by-election was held, and somebody was called Jithrad somebody. Those of my age, you can comment it. I do not remember everything. So, that was 1988. He resigned, but Kibaki, whom they had planned that they were to resign together, Kibaki never resigned. That led into the two. They both died when they had not forgiven each other. That was 1988. Then from there, he joined this what do you call, fighting for multi-party. And in 1990, he used to hold regular press conferences with Charles Rubia. They would hold by-election, no, not by-election. They would hold press conferences with Charles Rubia, Charles Wanyoike Rubia, and they used to call for multi-party. He used to believe that since he was very close to Moi, he was one of the people who could tell Moi without any fear of repercussion. So they organized, him and Rubia were those people who organized for Sabasaba. Sabasaba riots or demonstrations were planned for 7th July 1990. But a few days before that, both of them were detained. When they were detained, after some time, Charles Rubia was released, and he was released when he was of a poor health. But MATIBA continued being detained. So when MATIBA continued being detained, something happened. He got a stroke at committee. When he got a stroke in committee, instead of, you see, I do not know the identity of the doctor who was treating him, but the detainees up to today still threaten that they'll disclose the name of the doctor because he acted unprofessionally. This is somebody who has a stroke, and he was supposed to be treated, but he was being given painkillers. So there was a lot of alarm within the prison that he would die any time. But there was an arrangement between Raila and a prison warder called John, who was a Luhya by tribe, so that Ida used to visit. There were visits. There were she could bring. There was communication in one way or another through this warder called John. I've forgotten his Luhya name, but he was a Luhya by tribe. So that is when one of those occasions, Raila told Ida that go and look for Edith, Mrs. MATIBA. Go and tell her that her husband is in bad shape. But you see, when Mrs. MATIBA heard it and the commotion that was happening, that is when MATIBA was transferred from committee prison, surviving purely on painkillers. He was admitted in Nairobi hospital and an assumed name. Then a few days later, it was disclosed that MATIBA was there. So they now readmitted him with the true name. And then you see, that is too late. And that is why he became the way he was. After multi-party started, he went abroad for treatment. He went abroad for treatment. And when he went for treatment, he was being treated. And that is the time when, before that, we used to have a pressure group. You know, the law used to say that there was only one political party, and that was KANU. Jaramogi had started a party which was called NDP, not to be confused with Raila's NDP. Jaramogi's one is called National Development Party, and the other one was called National Democratic Party. So I can't differentiate the two, but Jaramogi started the initial NDP, where he was the chairman. A person called Salim Damwe. Yeah, Salim Damwe was the Secretary General, and so on and so on. But when they went for registration, they were denied because the Constitution had Section 2A. Then the Constitution had 2A, it denied. And then Ford, Ford started, Ford had Kinanthenge and so on. So when they made Jaramogi the chairman, again politicians from Kanu started touting him and saying, how can you lead two political parties, NDP, and you're also leading Ford? He said Ford was a pressure group. It was not a political party. And then when it was agreed that a political party be started, that is when now, when it was agreed that a political party in the name of Ford be started, that is when he forgot about NDP, the original NDP. When he was in hospital in London, the intelligence used to incite the two. There were some who could incite Jaramogi usikubali kuachilia, and another team from our people would go to London and incite MATIBA. So when MATIBA came back, there was pressure. There were two Fords. There was one Ford which was being accommodated along Haile Selassie Avenue at Ajip House. And then there was another one which had an office in Muthidi House in Westlands, not far from the museum. So we used to, the Kenyans used to call this one, the Kenyans used to call this one Ford Ajip branch, and also Ajip faction, and the other one was Ford Muthidi faction. This is the case of, suppose Moi had 40% and Ford had 60%. So the person who split, the two people who split Ford were one. You see, when Kibaki came with the DP, he ate more into Ford. The other person who split Ford was the Attorney General, Amos Wako. So he told them, of course, with the advice from the intelligence, that he told them that the best way is to register two different parties. And then since it was called Ford, Forum for Restoration of Democracy, the Ajip House said they were going to say Forum for Restoration of Democracy in Kenya. And then the Muthidi House came later after this one had been registered and said we are the original Ford, so we are going to call ourselves Ford Asili. Now during the 1992 elections, MATIBA did something that was very unique. From his pocket, and his detention and his poor health and whatever, and government targeting, imagine his businesses nearly collapsed, but he still had money. He used to pay anybody who was a candidate, from councillor, MP, and himself. He printed and each candidate, he financed those who were in his party. That one has never happened before, even up to today. And then from there, he became shortly the official leader of opposition. Actually, when the office was opened, he is the one who was there. And people are asking now that he was paralyzed. And imagine those people who are asking are the very same people who detained him, saying, how can a president be paralyzed and not? And that is when Shikuku used to say, since he can read and write, and he can read, things can be written for him, can be typed for him, but when it comes to signing, either his wife or Shikuku can sign for that. What many people do not know about MATIBA is that he was a mountaineer. He used to climb all the mountains, and even the time when he was detained, he had booked. He had climbed all the mountains. Himalayas, which is the highest mountain, I think he climbed those several times. And even the time Himalaya, it's called Everest, yeah, Mount Everest. When he was detained, he was going to climb the Everest mountain. But when he came back, he looked like a Karagosi, a cartoon. Another thing is that MATIBA was very much in football, and he was the chairman of KFF between 1974 and 78. And he started this newspaper called People Daily. I had forgotten that for a long time he was the chairman. He was a senior person in Kenya breweries. He was a senior person in the Kenya breweries. And when in 1979 he was looking for a way to dethrone Kiano, Kiano, being a minister in Moi's government, went and whispered to Moi at the district commissioner for Moranga, who was called Mr. Misiko, was undermining government projects. So Moi went and visited Moranga, and it has never happened, and I don't think it will ever happen. Imagine the president visiting your county and sacking the county commissioner on the spot. So he stood up, said, "Wapi DC?" DC stood up, saluted. We naleta vitu hapa burebure. Mi nasikia wewe sijui nimekuvuta kazi saa hii, utoke uende nyumbani. In that meeting, which was convened by Julius Gikonyo Kiano, of course MATIBA did not attend that meeting, but he was following it from far. When the information reached MATIBA, he told that DC that come to Kenya breweries and you'll be employed as a senior manager. Of course, DCs were very powerful, but Kenya breweries managers used to be paid more than the DCs. We have somebody who was called Wahome Mutai, Whispers. He used to call beer Hobsonian or even MATIBA. You know, MATIBA used to be, Hobson, I think, is the one who was a Mzungu who took over from MATIBA when MATIBA joined politics. Then around 1992, Kenya Brewery started an alcohol called Ken Brew. Ken Brew was short for Kenya Breweries. But MATIBA said, he thanked them, saying, "Hey, you have remembered me by starting a brew which is for Kennedy," but it was short for Kenya Breweries. That Ken Brew, I think, forget about Guinness, but I think Pilsner is the toughest beer from Kenya Brewers. But the Ken Brew, three of them had more alcoholic content than 10 Pilsners. But it was discontinued because those days Moi said, "Hey, mnaeka pombe ya..." And you see, drunkards are funny. Anaenda kwa bana sema, "Hey, leta ile pombe ya Ken MATIBA." So Kenya breweries were pushed to discontinue that alcohol. I can tell you what I've said is half of about MATIBA. If you have to talk about MATIBA, you'll spend twice this time. Thank you.